Dying father disowned my sister after she chose our mom's affair partner to walk her down the aisle. She now seeks closure I can't provide. My family used to be incredibly close, but everything changed back in 2003. That was the year my dad, who was 55 then, discovered that my mom, 54, was having an affair. And not just with anyone, she betrayed him with John, my dad's childhood best friend. They were inseparable, more like brothers than friends, and John had even stood beside my dad as the best man at his wedding. When the truth came out, my dad was shattered. He begged my mom to stay, to work things out for the sake of our family, but she chose John. They divorced, and in less than 5 months, my mom and John were married. I'm a twin, my sister Sarah and I are both 27 now. Growing up, Sarah was always the quintessential daddy's girl. He spoiled her more than any of us and she followed him everywhere. She was practically his shadow. That's why, when the divorce went down, it shocked everyone that Sarah decided to stay with our mom. Back then, we were the only kids left living at home. Our other 4 brothers had already moved out. I chose to live with my dad, while Sarah stayed with mom, coming over to our place on weekends. Occasionally I'd visit mom too, but I felt my place was with dad. What the divorce, and especially Sarah choosing mom, did to my dad would be hard to overstate. He tried so hard to keep it together in front of us, but for almost a year, I heard him cry himself to sleep every single night. Despite everything, he held on to his relationship with Sarah. If anything, he spoiled her even more, pouring his whole heart into being there for her. He showed up for everything: parent-teacher conferences, dance recitals, soccer matches. He was that super dad, always present. But things started to shift in college. Sarah, for as long as I could remember, always said she wanted to follow in dad's footsteps and go to med school. He's a surgeon, and I know he was proud she wanted to become one too. But mom and John, both lawyers, started leaning on her to switch majors and go into law instead. Eventually, she caved. John began mentoring her closely, they became really tight, and when she finished school, he set her up with a job at his law firm. Then came 2017, Sarah's wedding. Dad was beyond thrilled. He gave her a blank check for the wedding of her dreams, which, to be fair, he did for all of us, but for Sarah it was special. She was his only daughter, and for years, I heard him talk about how he couldn't wait for the day he got to walk his little girl down the aisle. Every wedding we went to, he'd say it, "Can't wait for my turn with you, sweetheart." But the day before the wedding, Sarah dropped a bomb. She said she wanted both Dad and John to walk her down the aisle. Dad is usually the most non-confrontational man you'll ever meet, so Sarah just assumed he'd go along with it. Instead, for the first time I can recall, he got truly angry. They had a massive fight. In the end, Dad refused to attend the wedding, and John alone walked Sarah down the aisle. After that, everything fell apart. Dad and our side of the family basically cut her off. She's tried reaching out again and again, desperately wanting to make things right, but he won't even hear her name, let alone speak to her. When she had her first child in 2018, part of me hoped he'd soften up and finally meet his grandkids, but he wouldn't budge. Earlier this year, Dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The treatments didn't work, and now we know it's terminal. Even now, when time is running out, he refuses to see Sarah. She's crushed and doesn't understand why, and it breaks my heart, especially since I'm so close with Dad and the last few weeks have been impossibly hard. I don't know how to help her let go, or reconcile the reality that she may never get the closure she's longing for. Update 1. A week after everything started unraveling, my dad's health took a sharp turn for the worse. It all happened so fast. One moment we were fighting for more time, and then suddenly, we were running out of it. We lost him exactly 1 month ago. Nothing about losing him was easy, or peaceful, but I suppose I never really expected it to be. Still, nothing could have prepared me for the heartbreak of watching someone I love endure so much pain in his final months. In a way, as devastating as it was for us, he deserved to rest. He was just so tired. At the very end, he managed to stay lucid long enough to say goodbye to me and my older brothers. The things he said to me, God, they cut deeper and gentler than I could have imagined. It was one of the most painful, beautiful moments of my life. His words meant everything, and while I could never share exactly what he told me, they're just too close, too sacred, I'll hold them forever. He also said goodbye to my daughters, just 11 months and 2 years old. It felt achingly familiar, like childhood. He kissed their foreheads, told them to be good girls, and whispered how much he loved them. That's a memory burned in me, though it hurts that they're far too young to remember it themselves. They still ask about Grandpa. Every time I try to explain that he's not coming back, they look at me with confusion. How could they understand? If I'm honest, at 27, I barely can. I was supposed to have so many more years with him. It doesn't feel fair at all. The hardest part, though, was what happened with my twin sister, Sarah. Dad died without speaking to her. I tried, over and over, to bridge that gap, but he simply wasn't interested. Sarah became desperate, and then suddenly, he was gone, though in truth, we all knew the end was coming, even if she couldn't face it. His funeral felt beautiful in a bittersweet way. So many people came and shared stories about him. For Sarah, though, it was shattering. She saw Dad for the first time since the night before her wedding, but she barely recognized him. Cancer had stripped away his strength. He'd always been the classic dad bod type, but in the end, he was just so thin. She cried through the whole service. My mom and John tried to show up, but my uncle stepped in and made sure they left. Good riddance. Dads will unfold it as expected. Coming from a family with old money and petrochemicals, he always had enough to provide. He split everything, money and properties, equally between all of us, even Sarah. He left a huge trust fund for each of his grandkids, including Sarah's children, whom he never got to meet. That was just my dad. He didn't care much for wealth, he just wanted his grandkids to have something to lean on. Where things really twisted was with the personal items. He left each of us a letter, except Sarah. Mine was all about our story, about my childhood. I've read that letter 100 times and I cry every single time. Dad loved photography, and he'd chronicled our family through thousands of photos. For each of us, he made a photo album, with notes written behind each image, where it was taken, a few words from him. It must have taken him years to prepare. That was just so him, always thoughtful, always finding a way to say goodbye. Sarah didn't get one of his letters. Her album was blank on the back of every photo. When she realized this, the regret shattered her. She suffered a breakdown and ended up spending a week hospitalized. She's doing a little better now, slowly climbing out of that darkness. Her husband and I are hopeful. She's eating and sleeping again, and though she still breaks down crying at least once every day, it seems to be improving. At least, that's what I keep telling myself. Then, last week, my wife and I discovered we're expecting again. It definitely wasn't planned, a birth control mishap, just a week's gap, and here we are. It's still early, so no one else knows, but it weighs on me more than I want to admit. I'm furious that this new baby won't get to meet my dad. It feels cruel and unfair. I resent that I have to face fatherhood without him, without his wisdom to guide me. He taught me so much about raising my daughters, and now, facing this alone terrifies me. I'm scared I'll never be the father to my children that he was to me, and God knows they deserve at least that. This is where things stand. I replay the what-if questions in my mind day after day, but none of them change a thing. There's no happy ending here, just the tough, knowing truth that life doesn't care about fair. It's bitter, but that's the nature of things. I'm doing my best to move forward, but some days I still feel unbelievably alone. Still, I'm holding on to the memories and the words my dad left me, hoping I can pass forward even a piece of the love he gave us. Update 2. We started packing up Dad's house. It was a slow, stubborn kind of work, every drawer a minefield, every coat pocket a ghost. The office was the worst. He kept everything in there, and it smelled like him in a way the rest of the house had already forgotten. Old coffee, dust, the faint chemical bite of the darkroom down the hall. I pulled one of his framed photos off the wall, a black and white of Sarah and me at maybe 8, asleep in the back of his old Suburban, and a tiny brass key fell out from the paper backing. It hit the floor and skittered under the desk. On the tape behind the frame, in his handwriting, it said simply, chest. The chest was in the darkroom closet, under a stack of mat boards and a box of developer. It was one of those beaten-up metal toolboxes he'd had forever, stickers half peeled and dented corners. Inside there were things that made my throat close, rolls of film in little gray canisters, neatly labeled, contact sheets, a Leica wrapped in a towel, and a small zippered pouch, with a microcassette recorder and 5 tapes. 4 of them were marked with our names. Sarah's was the 5th. I didn't listen. I won't ever be able to explain the earthquake in my bones when I picked it up and saw her name in his hand, but it wasn't mine. I texted her and asked if I could come by. She said yes before I finished typing. She looked brittle and softer at the same time, if that makes sense. Like grief had sanded off some edges and left others sharper. She held the tape like it might cut her. Her husband brought us a little plug-in recorder he bought in a rush from some electronics place, because nobody just has a microcassette player anymore. We sat on the floor with our knees touching, 2 grown-ups suddenly very small, and listened to our dad breathe for 10 seconds before he spoke. His voice was lower, tired in that way I knew too well, but steady. He said her name the way he used to, full, not short. He didn't apologize for not seeing her, and he didn't make excuses. He talked about the wedding day, how he had packed a tie and cufflinks and then sat on the edge of his bed and stared at them. He told her he had bought a card and scribbled "I'm proud of you," and then crossed it out because he didn't know how to mean it honestly with John at the end of the aisle. He said different versions of the same thing 4 different ways, that he loved her, fiercely and forever, that he could not share the role she had asked him to share, that he understood she had been trying to make space for all of her people, that it felt to him like a choice, and he could not live in that choice. He said she doesn't have to forgive him. He said he hoped she wouldn't let him be the reason she cut herself from her own life. "Let me be the bad guy," he said, and then, so gently it almost broke me, "but keep going." He told her where he had hidden the key, laughed at himself for being dramatic, and said the Leica in the chest was hers. "We bought it together," he said, and I had to rewind and listen again because we didn't buy cameras with John. We didn't buy anything with John. Then he said it, Dad and John. Back when they were still themselves. He and I split it in college, Dad said, a little sad smile in his voice. We saved all summer. I wasn't going to tell you that, but it's the truth of the thing. It saw the best and the worst of my life. He said if she could stand it, she should shoot with it. Make it yours, he told her. Take it back. We cried like idiots, both of us. It didn't fix anything, but it drew a line around the ache. There was something about hearing him take responsibility for his choice without shoving the weight back onto her that loosened something in her chest. She listened to it again the next morning and then called the firm. She didn't make a speech. She sent a resignation email to HR and one line to John: I need some distance. She drove to my place with the Leica in her lap like a glass bird and asked me how to load film. I hadn't shot in years, but Dad taught us both the same way, so my hands remembered. We went to the camera shop he loved, the one with the old man who always insisted we take a free roll for art, and develop the film from the Leica that had been sitting in it for God knows how long. It was 2004. The negatives came out like ghosts, grainy, beautiful, little moments of nothing that meant everything. There was one of Sarah on our front steps, knees pulled up, eating a popsicle, tongue bright red. One of Dad's hands, sharp in the foreground, changing a tire, grease under his nails. One accidental self-portrait in a shop window, Dad half in the frame with the camera to his face, light catching in his hair. On the contact sheet, next to that frame, in the faintest pencil, was a note I almost missed: we made it through this too. No capital letters, just him. Sarah took the prints home and taped the accidental self-portrait above her desk. She sent me a photo of it at midnight with no text. I knew what it meant. I drove over with a pack of the cheap cookies Dad used to bribe us with when he needed us to be okay. We sat on her kitchen floor again and ate sugar and laughed at nothing because laughing felt like a new language we were learning. The baby is real now. We saw the heartbeat. I don't know if anyone who hasn't been in an ultrasound room understands how loud a dot can be. It was like standing next to a train. I had Dad's chest key in my pocket and my wife's hand in my other, and for the first time since he died I felt a clean thought: I can do this. Not because I am him, God, I am not, but because he left enough of himself spread out in the world to pick up as I go. I can hear him in the tape telling Sarah to keep going. I can hear him telling my daughters to be good girls. It feels less like a haunting and more like a hand on the small of my back, steadying. There's one more thing. The album. We've left hers on the coffee table this whole time like a dare, pages like fresh snow. A couple nights ago, Sarah knocked water over it by accident. The pages dried a little warped, like waves. On the back of one photo, her 5 years old, gap teeth, arms wrapped around his neck, something had bled through from somewhere, or lifted, or I don't know. In the right light, you could see the press marks of handwriting, the way a person bears down on a page and leaves a ghost of the line. I grabbed a pencil like we were kids doing detective work and dragged the side of the lead across the paper, gently, like a rubbing. Words surfaced, imperfect and broken by the texture, but there, you were the best surprise of my life. She went very still. Then she laughed, this shocked little sound that turned into a sob. We didn't do the whole album. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. It was enough to know the silence wasn't empty, just heavy. I don't know what comes next, and I've stopped pretending I do. Sarah took the Leica to the park yesterday and came back with a roll of our mother walking alone along the water, a tiny figure in a big sky. She didn't send it to her. She didn't need to. She said she wanted to take pictures of the world where it doesn't hurt as much to look at it. I told her that sounded like Dad. She said, without hesitating, that it sounded like her. Update 3. Sarah had to go back to the firm to turn in her badge and sign some last papers, and she asked me to come. I said yes before she finished asking. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet, and the elevator doors shut on us like a mouth, and her reflection in the brushed steel looked like somebody else's brave face. She wore her hair back and no makeup and carried the Leica on a strap like a talisman. HR was quick, almost kind. A box of desk plants and files. A stapler she didn't recognize came out of a drawer like a strange animal. We were almost out the door when John stepped into the hall from a conference room like he'd been waiting behind the glass the whole time. He said her name the way people say a word they're tasting for poison. He looked smaller to me. Older. His tie was crooked by a 1/4 inch. He asked for 5 minutes. Sarah didn't answer. She walked past him to the empty conference room and sat in a chair that squeaked. I stayed in the doorway because I didn't trust myself. He started to talk about history and complicated love, and she lifted a hand and he actually stopped, which I don't think I've ever seen him do. She said she didn't come for a speech, and if he wanted to say one true thing, he should put it in a sentence, not a paragraph. He swallowed. He said he called our dad the night before her wedding. It came out like a confession he had been rehearsing. I called him and told him I would be honored to walk with him, he said, and he dragged out honored like it could hold up a rotten beam. I thought it would make it easier. I thought it would make it right. Sarah's face didn't move. You know when a dog hears a whistle too high for you to catch? It was like that. Her focus shifted and the air around her changed. She asked him if he had made it about what would be easier for him. He didn't have a sentence for that. On the sidewalk, she sat down on the curb in her dress pants and the winter cold came up through the concrete. She put the Leica in her lap and traced the dent in the top plate with her thumb the way Dad used to. That's why he wouldn't come, she said, not to me exactly. He wouldn't split a thing that wasn't splittable. She stood up like the ground had given her legs back. We didn't look back. 2 days later, the camera shop guy called. He has a voice like gravel and honey and he has known us since we were kids begging for expired film. He said he was cleaning out the back room and found an envelope with our dad's name rubber stamped on it, never picked up. He asked if we wanted it or if he should pitch it. We were there 20 minutes later. The envelope was heavy with work prints and contact sheets from 2003, curling a little at the edges. Most were everyday heartbreaks: an empty dining room table at twilight, our old mailbox with the paint peeling, Mom's garden without Mom, and one of the Suburban parked under the sugar maple with the leaves like a roof of fire. There was a lab form tucked inside with a note in Dad's messy print: for S when she's ready, don't call. The don't call was underlined and then scribbled out and then underlined again. It broke me in a ridiculous, precise way, like he had argued with himself on that tiny space and left the argument in there because he couldn't decide who to be. Back at Sarah's place, we laid the prints out on the floor, and it happened again, the ghost text. On the back of a picture of our back porch light at 2 a.m., there were pressure marks just visible if you tipped the paper in the window glare. We did our dumb crime show trick with the pencil. Words came up like shy fish. Not everything, just slivers, but enough. You can love two things that don't fit in the same room and still be a whole person. I had to sit down. Sarah started laughing in this wet, unbelieving way and then pressed the heel of her hand to her mouth like she could keep it all from spilling out. The baby gave us a scare this week, red on white that didn't look like anything but the worst. We went quiet in the car the way scared people do. The ultrasound room was cold on purpose and the tech was kind without overstepping. The dot was loud again. I swear I could hear it in my teeth. The doctor said the word subchorionic, which sounds like an underwater instrument, and told us to rest. In the hallway, I pressed the chest key into my palm until it hurt. I texted Sarah without words. She sent me a picture of a storm breaking over the river and just wrote, "Still here." I cried in the elevator like a coward and like a human being. Mom called me the next day. I almost didn't pick up. She asked if she could see me, just me, no drama. We met at the diner with the sticky tabletops where our baseball team used to crush pancakes after games. She came alone, no ring, hair pulled back in a simple clip the way she used to on Saturday mornings. She kept both hands around her coffee like it was cold and she was cold. She told me she and John were taking space, and I don't know if that's a euphemism or the truth or both. She said the two-walk idea had been hers. She said she thought it would be mercy. She cried in a way that made other tables glance and then pretended not to. She didn't ask me to forgive her. She said she understood if I didn't. I told Sarah. She didn't try to be generous about it and she didn't try to be cruel. She said she wanted to see Mom, not for reconciliation, just to put two eyes on the person she came from. They met at the park where she'd taken those pictures of the tiny figure in the big sky. Nobody yelled. Mom didn't reach for her. Sarah took one photograph of Mom's hands in her lap, fingers braided tight like rope, and then put the camera down. They sat in silence long enough for a jogger to pass twice. Mom asked if she could hug her and Sarah said not yet. Mom nodded like she'd expected that answer. It wasn't closure. It wasn't nothing. We found another tape by accident, not a secret one, side B of Sarah's. We had let it run once and flipped it off when it clicked. This time, it kept going past the click, a hiss and then Dad humming, almost a whisper, like he had put the recorder down on the darkroom counter and forgotten it was running. He was talking to himself the way he used to, giving directions out loud, the ritual of his hands. 5 minutes in the fixer, longer if you're patient. Rinse longer than you think. If it looks good wet, it's too dark. He laughed at himself and said, you always wanted to rush the rinse, and you could hear the sink in the glass of the timer pinging. Then, very low, not even sure he meant to say it out loud, I know you were trying to make a place for all of us. I wasn't brave enough to stand there. The room felt full of him again and empty in the same breath. Sarah asked the camera shop guy if she could hang 2 prints there for a month, nothing formal. He said yes and made a big show of grumbling about young artists taking over and then cleared his whole front wall like it was a chapel. Sarah printed the storm over the river and the accidental self-portrait of Dad with the camera to his face. She didn't put names on them. She wrote a title card in pencil lowercase like him, rinse longer than you think. The old man stood in front of them for a long time and didn't say a word. Dad's house is almost empty now. The office doesn't smell like him anymore, it smells like lemon oil and cardboard. We left the darkroom for last. We pulled the blackout curtains and turned the safe light on and stood in the dark like people holding their breath. The red made our hands look alien. We mixed chemicals like we were teenagers getting away with something, and we contact printed one roll Sarah shot of nothing in particular, telephone wires, a stop sign, a robin sitting fat and unbothered on the fence. Watching an image appear in a tray still feels like magic even when you know the trick. The timer pinged and we moved the print from one bath to the next, careful, patient. It was quiet except for the little sounds, water and glass and the hum of the fan. Sarah said, I think this is it. I asked, what is? She said, this. Doing it slow. Letting the picture come up. Rinsing longer than I think. I stood there with my hands dripping and thought how much of life is just that, the waiting, the not rushing, the part where you stand there with your heart in your throat and let the image find itself. The dot is still beating. Sarah is taking pictures of the world where it doesn't hurt as much to look. Mom is walking by water. John is in a glass building talking to empty air. And Dad, somehow, is here, his voice in a hiss of tape, in the press marks on paper, in the way we keep our hands steady for just another minute, just to be sure. Update 4. We thought the house was done with us, but the attic had one more grip. It was winter cold and summer hot at the same time up there, air thin with dust you could taste. A single boot of Dad's sat heel down like it was waiting on its partner. I dragged a banker's box toward the scuttle light, taxes in Sharpie, thick as a warning, and when I lifted the lid the smell of paper and a little mouse kept decades came up, W-2s on top like a disguise. Under them, a manila folder with the tab torn off and nothing written in Dad's hand for once. Inside, our local paper, a clipped column from 2019, attorneys admitted to the bar, Sarah's name yellowed and neat under a line of highlighter. His favorite pen bled through the edge where he'd written a word and then, true to form, cross-hatched it out. A printout of the firm's website with a headshot of Sarah, too polished, wearing that tight smile she used for cameras. In the margin, tiny, good. Then a hard line through the G as if he couldn't stand his own softness looking back at him. There was a program from her wedding. How he got it, I don't know. The spine had a crease like it had been opened all the way and then shut too fast. On the back, the indentation of his handwriting but no ink, his ghost method even to himself. We did the pencil trick instinctively. 3 words came up, I carried you. The air made a noise I didn't know air could make. Sarah put her fingers in the dent in the paper where the pencil didn't reach, the bare path of the thought he hadn't let himself write. She didn't cry, which felt stranger than if she had. She just sat down on the attic floor right there, hair catching insulation sparkles, program in her lap, and breathed like she was trying not to fog a lens. He watched, she said, not asking. From the door, I said, not sure which door I meant. The camera shop guy called again but not for a surprise this time. He doesn't do surprises on purpose. He said he was retiring before the internet wins the war, and could we come look through the back for anything we wanted before he boxed it. Sarah drove. The shop smelled like old cardboard and fixer and the particular sweetness of old plastics. He had put aside a metal timer with the bell that pings like a polite teacup and a safe light with a scar across it where somebody once set a hot thing down wrong. He liked this one, he said, hand on the timer like a head on a shoulder. He told us to take the deep sink too, the one with the hard water line in a precise circle at exactly 8 inches from the drain. There is kindness that looks like money and there is kindness that looks like a heavy sink you have to get down a narrow stair. We took turns on the bottom, laughing and swearing and bleeding knuckles. At Sarah's place, we blacked out her bathroom with trash bags and painter's tape and the duvet cover we sacrificed to art. We hung the safe light and it made the room red and submarine, and the timer pinged like a bell for a life we knew how to live. She had shot a roll of my girls at the park, one on top of the other on the slide, laughter in their teeth. We printed 1, then 2. The scratch in the Leica's back that Dad always meant to fix but never did showed up in the same place on every frame like a comet's tail. It's not a flaw, Sarah said. It's a signature. She decided not to fix it. The ultrasound tech didn't blink when I set the microcassette recorder on the counter. She was the kind of person who lives between fear and everyday, which is what ultrasound techs must be. The machine hummed and then there it was again, the dot. It clattered like a trout against a dock, indecorous and holy. I pressed record, the tape hissed and the heartbeat climbed over it, a small drummer inside a big body of water. Back home, we played the tape under the red light. Dad's hum from side B, our baby's dot, the timer's ping. It layered into something that felt less like a collage and more like instructions. The girls asked to hear the little thump again and I told them sure, and my older one put her ear to the recorder like she could put the sound right in her head and keep it there. Mom came to the shop on the last Saturday before the old man closed. She stood a little way back from the 2 prints on the front wall, the storm and the accidental self-portrait, and folded her hands like church without pews. She read the title card and said, "To the empty air, I never rinsed anything long enough." She smiled, small, not asking for an answer. She told us, not looking at us, that she used to sit in the darkroom doorway with her feet on the threshold so she wasn't in or out, just listening to the timer because it made her feel like time could be counted and obeyed. We were so young. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She bought 2 rolls of Tri-X and an orange filter and didn't know what to do with her hands while he rang her up. On the sidewalk, she put the film in her coat pocket like talismans and said she might take a picture of the garden. "Take one of your own hands," Sarah said. It landed gentle. Mom nodded like a student. We found one more thing in the house. Not a secret, not a trick. In the pantry, behind the flour bin, a stack of spiral notebooks we had walked past 100 times. Grocery lists, oil changes, a phone number for plumber Frank, and pages of notes on prints, apertures, times, little codes only he knew. In one, pressed flat as a leaf, a receipt from the baseball diner, dated 2 days after Sarah's wedding. 1 coffee. 1 slice of pie. I stared at it until the numbers doubled. The waitress had circled a line on the back, "We're glad you came in, Doc," and drawn a smiley face with eyelashes. Sarah put it with the wedding program in her bag and didn't say anything and didn't have to. John sent a letter. Plain envelope, his name like a signature he wished would camouflage him. It said he had moved out. It said he was sorry in 3 different ways that seemed to be for 3 different people. He enclosed a picture of him and Dad in front of a pawn shop in 1983, both stupid with joy, holding the Leica between them like a fish they had caught. The back said $240 split, we were thieves and kings. Sarah taped it to the inside of her kitchen cabinet door where nobody would see it unless they were looking for sugar. She wrote on the back below his line, I am not a room you stand in to feel better. She didn't send it anywhere. The album came back out of hiding. It lives on her coffee table like a truce flag. The pages still warp a little where the water dried, a soft wave. She took the wedding program and slid it into the sleeve behind the photo of her 5 years old with her arms around Dad's neck, like she was making a pocket for a thing that had nowhere else to go. She took a pencil and, on the blank back of the next picture, wrote in small letters, I was trying to set a table where both chairs fit. We sat a long time not talking because talking would have made it smaller. The house sold. The new couple is young in the way that means you can still afford to imagine it all going right. They liked the oak in the living room and the stupid half-bath Dad put in under the stairs as a project and never fully finished. Before we handed over the keys, we took one last thing down from the office wall, a crooked nail, bent and then straightened and then bent again, that had held up the Suburban picture for 20 years. I put it in my pocket. Sarah laughed at me and then did the same with the second nail. At home, my daughter drew a family with 6 hands because she can't count yet but she knows there are more hands than she can draw. She gave the tiniest person on the paper a big smile and said, that's the heartbeat. I didn't correct her. The darkroom in a bathroom is where we go now when the day is too loud. The tapes sit in a cereal bowl by the sink, the ones we've played soft-edged from use. The sink gurgles like an old man who's telling a story. We print the robin, the stop sign, the telephone wires, the storm. We watch the image rise out of the blank like a memory that trusts us. The timer pings. We move the paper and wait. We rinse longer than we think, and when the urge comes, always, to lift it too soon, we put our hands on the lip of the tray and hold. We let the picture be a picture before we decide what it means. The dot keeps beating. Mom's garden will have snow on it and then not. John will be somewhere with a bed made up like a guest room that's his for now. We are 2 people with pockets full of bent nails and receipts and ghost words, making a room where the light is gentle and the water runs and whatever we make, we give it time to arrive.